I have buried a lot of things on this ranch. Fence posts, dogs, a marriage, one good truck, and my father's opinion of me. What I never expected to bury and then dig back up with my own two hands in the middle of the worst night of the year was hope. Because hope out here is the most expensive animal you can keep. It eats more than a horse and it kicks harder, and when it dies on you, it takes half your ribs with it. So when I tell you that a river gave me back the one thing I'd sworn off forever, I need you to understand that I didn't want it. I want that on the record. Whatever I did that night, I did it against my own better judgment, cursing the whole way, soaked to the bone and already grieving a thing that wasn't even mine. This is the story of a foal that was born to be killed, and a flood that had other ideas, and an old man who found out too late in life to be convenient, that he wasn't done caring yet. Stay with me, it gets worse before it gets better, but it does get better. I promise you that much. The water came up through the floorboards of my truck. Before I understood, I was already in the river. That's the thing nobody tells you about a flash flood. There's no wall of water, no cinematic wave. 1 second the road is a road, low and familiar, the same washboard gravel I've cussed at for 31 years. The next second the headlights are catching something that shouldn't be there, a shine, a moving shine, silver and wrong. And then the front tires drop into it, and the whole truck shudders like a wet dog, and the cold comes up around my boots so fast I actually looked down to see if I'd left a window open. I hadn't. The window was fine. It was the world that had come apart. Let me back up because I'm getting ahead of myself, and my daughter always said that was my worst habit, telling the end before the middle, spoiling my own stories. She'd be 41 now. I'll get to her later or I won't. We'll see how brave I'm feeling. The night this happened, I was out on that road at 11:40 because of a phone call. My name's Delrook. I run. The tents keep slipping, a cattle operation up the Bitter Fork Valley, which is a generous word for what's really 400 acres of stubborn ground and a house my grandfather built badly. I keep a weather journal. Have every day since 1989. It's a spiral notebook, the kind kids use, and I write the high, the low, the wind, and whatever the sky did that I found interesting. My wife used to say it was the only diary a man like me would ever be caught keeping, and she wasn't wrong. There are years in those notebooks where the only record that I felt anything at all is a line that says low clouds, geese moving south early, felt it in my knees. You learn to read yourself sideways at my age, through the weather. That June had been the driest on record. I'd written it down in block capitals like I was mad at the page. 81 days no rain. The Bitter Fork was down to a trickle you could step over. My cattle were ribs and eyes. I'd already sold 12 head I couldn't afford to feed, standing in the sale barn watching a man half my age with a clipboard decide what my life was worth, and I'd driven home that day and not written anything in the journal at all. Some days the weather isn't the thing that's dry. Then that night, the sky finally did something. It started around 9 as a smell, that copper mineral smell that comes before mountain rain, the one that makes the horses restless and the dogs go quiet. By 10, it was coming down in ropes. By 11, the ground, baked hard as a county road, couldn't take a drop of it, and every gully and draw and dry wash for 40 miles was suddenly a river, remembering it used to be a river. The phone rang at 11:35. I remember because I looked at the clock and thought, nobody calls an old man at this hour with good news. It was Harlan Prout. Now, I need to tell you about Prout, and I need to tell it fair, because it would be easy to make him the devil of this story, and he wasn't the devil. He was worse than a devil in some ways and better in others, which is to say he was a man, and men are complicated even when we wish they'd have the decency not to be. Prout ran a hauling operation. What he hauled mostly was horses, not to homes, not to pastures. He ran what the trade politely calls kill-buys. He'd go to the low-end auctions, the ones where old lesson ponies and lamed-up ropers and broodmares who'd stopped throwing good bobbies all end up, and he'd buy them by the pound. By the pound. and he trucked them south across the border to a place none of them came back from. It's legal. That's the part that sits in your chest wrong. It is a legal thing that happens on ordinary Tuesdays. I'd known Prout 30 years. We weren't friends. But out here in a valley this empty, you don't get to pick who you know. You just accumulate people the way a field accumulates rocks, and some of them you'd never have chosen, and you help them dig out their truck at 2 in the morning anyway because next week it'll be your truck, your ditch, your turn to be humbled. Dell, his voice was tight over the rain. Dell, I'm off the road at the Bitter Fork crossing. I got a load and the water's coming up and I can't. Dell, the trailer's tipping. I got animals in the trailer. And God help me, my first thought, the honest one, the one I'm not proud of was, let it tip. Because I knew what was in that trailer. Slaughter horses. Animals already sold, already dead in every way that mattered except the last one. Part of me, the tired part, the 81 days no rain part, thought, what difference does a few hours make to a horse that's headed where they're headed? But I got in the truck. I always get in the truck. That's not virtue. That's just the shape a life takes when you've spent it in a place where not showing up means somebody dies, and you've seen what that does to a man, the not showing up. I've seen it hollow people out. I wasn't going to be hollow. So I got in the truck and I drove into the dark toward the sound of the river, and I did not know I was driving toward the thing that would crack my whole life open like an egg. The crossing is a low-water bridge, barely a bridge at all, a concrete slab that sits maybe 2 feet over the Bitter Fork in a normal year. That night the fork was over it by 4 feet and climbing, brown and muscular and loud, carrying whole trees like they were toothpicks, and Prout's rig was jackknifed half on the slab and half in the current. The trailer canted at an angle that made my stomach drop. My headlights found him first. He was out of the cab, waist deep, hanging onto the trailer rails, and he was screaming something the water ate before it reached me. Then my truck dropped into the edge of it and the cold came up through the floorboards, and I understood I'd driven in too far, and I threw it in reverse and felt the tires spin and not catch, spin and not catch. And for one long white second I was a passenger in my own life, waiting to see what the river decided. The tires caught. I backed onto high ground, hands shaking, and I sat there one heartbeat too long, the wipers slapping, and I looked at that trailer full of doomed horses and I thought about my daughter. I told you I'd get to her. Her name was Josie. She died at 19, a car, black ice, a road not unlike this one, a different kind of water. She'd been the one on this ranch who couldn't walk past a hurt thing. Barn cats with torn ears, a coyote pup she hid in the tack room for a week before I found out, a 3-legged calf the vet said to put down that she raised on a bottle and named Democracy for reasons she never explained. She'd have been out of my truck already. She'd have been in that river before I finished parking. My daughter did not have the part of the brain that calculates whether a thing is worth saving. It was just missing in her, like a tooth, and I used to think it would get her killed. It did get her killed, in the end, in a manner of speaking. She swerved for a deer. 19 years old, and she died avoiding an animal that walked away fine. That's the kind of person she was, and that's the kind of joke the universe finds funny. I don't pray lost the neck, but I sat in that truck and I said out loud to nobody, to her, I'm too old for this, Joe. And then I got out and waded in. The cold is the thing. People think drowning, they think being swept away, and sure, that's the finale. But the cold gets you first. It reaches into you and closes a fist around your lungs and your heart forgets its own rhythm. That water was snowmelt and mud, and it hit me at the thighs like a slammed door, and every year of my 63 announced itself at once. I got to Prout. He grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. They're going over, he shouted. The trailer, the far axle's already gone, Dell. They're gonna go over into the deep, and I can't get the doors, I can't. The trailer was a stock trailer, the kind with a rear gate you swing open. And that gate was underwater now, and the whole aluminum box was groaning, shifting downstream inch by inch, and inside it I could hear them. That's the sound I'll take to my grave, horses screaming. There is nothing like it. It doesn't sound like a horse. It sounds like a person who has lost the words for what's happening to them. It sounds like the inside of your own worst night. How many? I yelled. Six head, but Dell. And here his voice did something I'd never heard it do, this hard man who bought death by the pound. It cracked right down the middle. Dell, one of 'em foaled. On the drive. There's a baby in there. Born maybe 2 hours ago. It was standing on the mare and I don't. A foal. A newborn foal on its first night of life, in a metal box filling with river. I want to tell you I felt something noble. I didn't. What I felt was fury. A great, cold, useless fury at Prout and at the auction and at the drought and at the deer that killed my daughter and at every legal ordinary Tuesday thing that grinds the soft animals of this world into meat and money. I felt it so hard my teeth ached. And under the fury quieter, something my daughter left me, a voice that just said, "Go." We got to the gate together. The latch was underwater and my hands were numb and I couldn't feel the pin, so I did it by memory, by the shape of 1,000 gates opened over a lifetime, and it gave, and the current took the gate and nearly took my arm with it, and the horses came out in a churning, terrified rush. You cannot direct a panicked horse in floodwater. You can only get out of the way and pray they find the bank. 4 of them did, more or less. I saw them scramble up the far side, dark shapes heaving into the sagebrush, gone. One went under and I did not see it come up, and I have made my peace with that, and I am lying. I have not made my peace with it. I still see it. And the mare? The mare wouldn't leave. She was down in the trailer, tangled somehow. One hind leg caught in the wreck of a divider, and she was fighting to keep her head up, and pressed against her, wedged into the highest corner where the water hadn't reached yet, was the foal. It was so new it still had the berth on it. Slick, dark, impossibly small, its legs folded under it wrong, its whole body one long tremble. And it wasn't screaming like the others. That's what undid me. It was too new to even know it should be afraid. It just looked at me, this creature 2 hours into the world, with these huge, wet, uncomprehending eyes, and it made a sound I can only describe as a question. Prout was fighting to free the mare's leg. I could see it wasn't going to work. The trailer lurched, dropped. The water surged up another foot in a second, and the mare went under to her eyes and came up blowing. And I understood the arithmetic the way you understand bad news, all at once, in the body before the mind. We could not save both. There was time for one. The mare, 700 pounds of trapped terror, or the foal, 10 pounds of shivering question. And the mare, if we cut her loose, might make the bank. And the foal, orphaned and hours old, probably wouldn't live the night regardless. No mother, no milk, no warmth, in June that was suddenly February. Prout looked at me, rain sheeting off both our faces. And he said the thing that I have turned over in my head every day since, the thing that told me I'd had him wrong for 30 years and it was too late to say so. Take the baby. I got the mare. Go, Dell should want you to take the baby. She, the mare. He meant the mare. This man who sold horses to slaughterhouses in the last extremity, when it cost him everything and gained him nothing, chose to stay with the trapped grown animal so a stranger could carry off her child. I have known deacons and doctors and men who called themselves good who would not have done that. And Harlan Prout did it in a flooding river at midnight with no one watching who'd ever believe it. I took the foal. I got my arms under it. It weighed nothing. It weighed everything. And it didn't fight me. It just pressed its wet face into my neck like it had decided, in the absence of any other information, that I would do, that I was the world now. And I turned and fought back toward the light of my headlights with the river pulling at every step, trying to take this last small thing. And I would not let it. I would not. I said out loud, "You don't get this one to the water," like it could hear me. Behind me, I heard Prout working at the mare's leg. I heard the trailer groan and shift. I did not look back. I want you to know that I wanted to. But I had a live thing in my arms, and looking back is how you drop the live thing. So I fixed my eyes on the bank and I climbed, and the sagebrush tore my hands, and I got up onto the high ground and fell to my knees in the mud with the foal still pressed against me, both of us shaking, and only then, did I turn around. The headlights caught the river, the brown boiling river. The trailer was gone. I don't remember the drive back. I've tried. There's a hole in that night where the drive should be. The next thing I have is my kitchen, the yellow light, the old linoleum, the smell of the coffee I'd made hours earlier and never drunk, and me standing in the middle of it dripping river water, holding a foal that was dying. Because it was dying. I knew it the way you know these things after a life spent around animals being born and animals stopping. It was cold, the deep cold, the wrong cold, the cold that comes from inside. Its gums were white. Its breathing had gone shallow and quick and then worse, slow. A newborn foal has almost nothing in reserve. It hadn't nursed. It had no colostrum, no first milk, none of the antibodies that are the whole difference between a foal that lives and a foal that doesn't. It had spent its 2 hours of life in terror and freezing water. By every law I know, it should have died on my kitchen floor. I have delivered foals and I have lost foals and I know the protocol like I know my own name, and I want to be honest that I almost didn't do it. I stood there, 63 years old, so tired I could feel it in my teeth, holding a slaughter foal that wasn't mine, that I couldn't afford, that was probably going to die anyway, and a voice in me, the 81 days voice, said, clear as anything, put it down warm and let it go easy. You've done enough. You saved it from the river. That's more than the world was going to give it. Let it be enough. And another voice, my daughter's voice, the missing tooth voice, said one word. No. So I moved. I got every towel in the house. I got the electric blanket off my own bed and the space heater from the shop, and I built a nest in the corner by the wood stove, and I got that fire roaring like I meant to burn the place down. I rubbed that foal vigorous, rough, the way the mare's tongue would have, because cold newborns need friction, need to be told by touch that they're alive and expected to stay that way. I rubbed until my arms screamed. I talked to it the whole time. I don't remember what I said. Probably nonsense, probably her name, probably stay, don't you do this, stay. I called Deb Havorson, the vet, at 1 in the morning, and she picked up on the second ring because that's who she is, and she talked me through it. Warm the belly, not just the outside, a bag of warm water against the abdomen. Get fluids in if I could. And the milk. It needed milk, and it needed it soon, and I didn't have a mare and the feed store was closed and 40 minutes away. And Deb said the words that turned that night from a rescue into something else, something that reached out past that room and pulled in the whole valley. Dell, get on the phone. Somebody near you's got a nursing mare or fresh colostrum in a freezer. Somebody always does. Call around, wake people up. That's what the phone tree's for. The phone tree. Out here we have a thing, every ranch, every number a chain. It's for wildfires and lost hunters and heart attacks an hour from the nearest ambulance. It is not, traditionally, for a single dying foal of no particular value belonging to nobody, rescued from a kill buyer's trailer by an old man too stubborn to let it go. I used it anyway. And this is the part of the story I still can't tell without stopping. This is the part I have to get exactly right. Because they came. The first person I called was Marta Reyes, because her number is second on the tree after mine, and because at 1 in the morning you call the person you're least ashamed to wake. Marta runs sheep up the north end with her son. She's 70-something, and she has forgotten more about keeping small dying things alive than the rest of us will ever learn. She picked up on the 4th ring with a voice like gravel in a coffee can, and she didn't say hello. She said, "Who's dead?" "Nobody yet," I said. "I got a foal, newborn, off Prout's rig out of the river. It's going cold on me and it never nursed. Deb says find colostrum." There was a silence on the line, and in that silence I heard her sit up in the dark of her own house, heard the bed springs, heard a whole life of 2 in the morning phone calls settle onto her shoulders like a coat she'd worn 1,000 times. "Off Prout's rig," she repeated, flat. because everyone in this valley knew what Prout's rig carried. Everyone had their opinion, and I braced for that dead thing isn't worth your night, Dell, because I'd have understood it. It's what I'd told myself in the truck. Instead, she said, I got colostrum in the deep freeze. Use not mares, but it'll do for tonight. Manuel'll bring it. And I'm calling the BTTR field girl. She's got that mini mare that just weaned. She might milk out. Keep it warm, keep talking to it. Don't you let it sleep too deep. And she hung up because Marta has never in her life said goodbye. It's a superstition with her. You don't say goodbye to people you intend to see again. I hung up and I looked down at the foal. It looked worse. I'll be honest about that because I promised you honest, and there's no version of this night that's true and also easy. Its eyes had gone half-lidded. The breathing had that long pause in it that you learn to dread, the pause where you count 1, 2, 3, 4, and just when you're sure, it breathes again and your own body remembers how. I got down on the linoleum with it. I put my ear against its ribs and I listened to a heart working too hard and too slow at the same time, and I put my hand flat on its side and I said, Don't. Not after all that. Don't you dare. And then the headlights started coming. Manuel Reyes got there first, 22 minutes after his mother hung up, which is a drive that takes 35 in daylight, and he did it in the rain in the dark on flooding roads, and I did not ask him how because some things a man shouldn't know about his neighbors. He came through my door without knocking, soaked, a soft side cooler in his arms like it was the crown jewels, and he took one look at the foal, and his face did the thing all our faces do, that flicker, that involuntary math. This one's too far gone, and then he set it aside the way we all learned to, and he knelt down and got to work. We thawed the colostrum in a pot of warm water on the stove, both of us hovering over it like it was going to hatch. You can't microwave it. Heat kills the very things that make it worth having. So it thaws slow while a foal dies fast, and that's the cruelty of it. And Manuel stood there stirring that pot with a wooden spoon, this 30-year-old man who'd driven through a flood, stirring like his mother taught him, saying under his breath in Spanish what I took to be prayer and later found out was just counting, keeping himself steady, uno, dos, tres. We got the first of it into the foal with a syringe, into the side of the mouth slow, in case it couldn't swallow. It swallowed. God, that swallow. Manuel and I both made a sound, not a word, just a sound, the sound two men make when a thing they'd given up on does something small and alive. Then the second set of lights. The Butterfield girl Cassie, 19, the same age my Josie never got past, and I felt that in my chest like a thumb pressed on a bruise every time she moved. She'd milked her mini mare in the dark of her own barn and brought it warm in a mason jar wrapped in a hunting jacket. And mare's milk is the real thing, the right thing. And she'd thought to bring a proper full bottle too, the kind with the right nipple, because of course the kill-by foal didn't come with a starter kit. And then more lights. I want you to understand, I called one person, Marta. Marta may be called one too. And by 2:30 in the morning there were 6 vehicles in my yard. The Hendricks brothers, who I'd been in a fence-line dispute with for 11 years and hadn't spoken to except through lawyers, showed up with a heat lamp and a generator in case my power went, which it did at 3. And their generator is the only reason this story has the ending it has. Old Doc Pruitt, not the vet, the retired human doctor, 91 years old, had his granddaughter drive him over because he'd heard dying and newborn, and some instinct 80 years deep got him out of bed. And he sat in my kitchen chair the whole night not doing much, just watching, just witnessing, because sometimes that's the job and the old know it. Somebody brought food nobody ate. Somebody made coffee that everybody drank. My kitchen, that had held one lonely man and his weather journal for 11 years since Josie's mother left, was suddenly full of people I'd spent a decade keeping at arm's length, and every one of them had come out into a flood in the middle of the night for a 10-pound animal that the law had already priced by the pound. I have thought a great deal since about why. It wasn't the foal, not really. None of them had seen the foal. They came in the dark not knowing if it'd be alive when they got there, and most of them stayed after it was clear it might not make it, which is the opposite of how people behave when they've come for a happy ending. I think, and I've had a long time to think, I think they came for the thing behind the thing. I think when Marta set off Prout's rig out of the river, every one of them heard the same story I'd heard, the story we all carry out here and never say. That the world grinds up the soft and the used up and the no longer profitable, that it does it legally on ordinary Tuesdays, and that most of the time we let it because what are you going to do, one man against the arithmetic? And here was one time, one single time, where the arithmetic had a crack in it, where a flood had reached into the machine and knocked one small life loose, and an old fool was trying to catch it. And for once, they could put their hands on the crack and hold it open. You don't get many chances to save something from the way things are. When one comes in a valley like this, you drive through the flood. Around 4, the foal stopped fatting. There's no dramatic moment. That's not how it goes, and if I told you there was a lightning strike instant where it opened its eyes and stood up whole, you'd know I was lying and you'd be right too. What happened was slower and better than that. The pauses in its breathing got shorter. The white gums went the faintest pink. It took a whole bottle from Cassie, who'd been on her knees on my linoleum for 2 hours and would not let anyone spell her. And when it finished, it did a thing that made that entire crowded kitchen go silent. It lifted its head, on its own, and it looked around the room at all of us, at the strangers who'd come out of the storm for it with those huge dark eyes, and it made that sound again, the question sound, the what is all this, what is the world, are you all mine? And Doc Prewitt, 91 years old, said from his chair in a voice like dry paper, "Well, there it is." That was all. There it is. And I had to go stand on my own porch in the rain for a minute, because a man my age can't be seen doing what I was doing, and the rain was good for that. The rain will hide a lot. The rain has hidden a great deal from me over the years, and I'm grateful to it. When I came back in, Marta had arrived. She'd waited till dawn to come herself, sent her ammunition ahead and followed after. That's her way, and she was standing over the foal with her arms crossed, and she looked at me, and she said the thing I'd been not thinking about all night. The thing under the rescue. The thing that was going to be the actual story once the sun came up and the easy part was over. So Marta said, "Whose is it?" Here's what I hadn't let myself work out, in all the warm water and colostrum and headlights of the night. That foal wasn't mine. Legally it belonged to whoever had bought the mare at auction, which was Prout, or Prout's buyer down south, the slaughter contract. That foal was, in the eyes of the law, meat that had inconveniently been born alive. If Prout had survived, and I did not yet know if Prout had survived, that was its own black hole in the middle of the morning that I was walking carefully around the edges of. Then that foal was his property, and his property was contractually promised to a place I will not describe, and there was every legal path in the world by which the thing we'd all just spent a night saving could be loaded onto another trailer next week and finish the trip the river had interrupted. We could save it from drowning. Saving it from the arithmetic was a different fight. And it was the fight my daughter would have understood better than any of us, because she never in her life accepted that the way things are is the way things have to be, and it killed her. And it also was the best thing about her. And those two facts have never once sat easy in me. So at 6 in the morning, gray light coming up over a valley that was mostly underwater, I did the thing that decided it. I got in my truck, a different truck, the borrowed Hendricks truck, mine being somewhere downstream, and I drove to the crossing to find out about Prout. They'd pulled his rig out of the deep pool a half-mile down, wrapped around a cottonwood, empty. The doors sprung, the aluminum peeled like a can. Empty. And I stood on the bank with the search and rescue boys and the sheriff, and I looked at that torn-open trailer, and I thought about a man waist-deep, telling a stranger take the baby. I got the mare, and I got ready to grieve him because I had him figured for gone, and I was already composing the thing I'd say at the service about how none of us knew him. None of us, not really. Then somebody said, "There he is." Prout was sitting on the tailgate of an ambulance 100 yards up, wrapped in one of those foil blankets, alive. The mare had lived too. That's the part I still can't quite believe, and I've stopped trying to. When the trailer went over, the current that took it also, somehow, tore that divider loose and freed her leg, and she and Prout went down that river together in the dark, and both fetched up alive on a gravel bar a quarter-mile down, and he'd walked her out at first light. This half-drowned man leading a half-drowned mare up out of the bitter fork like something out of a story your grandmother tells you don't quite believe. I walked up to him. We looked at each other, two old men who'd been in the same river. "The Foal," he said, first words. "Not am I in trouble, not my truck, not my load, the Foal." "Lived," I said. "Whole valley came, it lived." And Harlan Prout, who bought death by the pound for 30 years, put his face in his foil-blanketed hands and cried like something breaking, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and I did not say any of the things I'd spent 30 years thinking about him, because they were wrong or they weren't the whole truth, and a man is more than his worst Tuesday. He signed it over to me that afternoon, the foal and the mare both. There was paperwork, there's always paperwork, the arithmetic likes its forms filled out, but he signed it, and when I tried to work out what I owed him, what the by-the-pound number was, he said something I've kept. He said, "You don't buy back a thing the river gave you, Dell, that ain't yours to pay for and it ain't mine to sell. Not that one. Not after that." And then he said he was getting out of the business, and I don't know if he did. I want to tell you he did, that the flood washed him clean and he never bought another kill horse, but I promised you honest, and the honest thing is I don't know. I heard he sold his rig. I heard other things too. People are not stories. They don't get clean endings just because they had one good night. Maybe he quit and maybe he didn't, and maybe he's out there right now at some low-end auction doing the same arithmetic. And both of those men are the man who stayed with the mare so a stranger could carry off her child. I've made my peace with not knowing. That's the only peace this valley ever really offers you, the peace of not knowing, taken willingly, because the alternative is knowing, and knowing is worse. The mare raised the foal, took right to it, once they were both dry and warm and back on 4 legs in my barn, nuzzled it, cleaned it, let it nurse. All the things the flood had stolen from that first night given back in the days after. I'd worried she wouldn't, that too much had gone wrong at the start, that the bond wouldn't take. But she was its mother and it was her child, and the river hadn't managed to unmake that, though God knows it tried. I named the foal Democracy. I know, but that was Josie's name for the 3-legged calf, the one nobody could explain, and it turned out I'd been keeping it for something. It turned out some part of me had been holding that ridiculous name in reserve for 11 years, for the day a hurt thing came along that I couldn't walk past, and I finally understood at 63 that I'd had the missing tooth all along, that she left it to me. That the part of her that couldn't calculate whether a thing was worth saving hadn't died on that black ice road. It had just gone underground in me, waiting for a flood to bring it back up. That's the miracle in the title, if you're wondering. It isn't that the foal lived, though that was a near thing and I don't take it lightly. It isn't even that the valley came, though I'll wonder at that till I die. The miracle is that I did. That the water reached into a hollowed-out old man and knocked something loose that I'd priced by the pound years ago and sold off cheap. The miracle is that I found out I wasn't done. I still keep the weather journal. I want to show you the last thing I wrote in it. The entry from that night, because I went back and I found it. The page I'd filled out at 9 o'clock before the phone rang. Before any of it, in my own hand. In the dry block capitals of a man who was angry at the sky. 81 days no rain. And underneath it, added later in different ink in a hand less steady, at some hour I don't remember, when the foal was breathing pink and the kitchen was full of my neighbors and the generator was humming in the dark. Rain came so hard it took the bridge. Rain came so hard it brought them all out of their houses in the dark. Rain came so hard it. I stopped there. I don't remember stopping. I've left it that way. Some sentences you're not meant to finish. Some things you trust the reader, you, Joe, whoever's holding this, to know. Democracy is a yearling now. She stands at the fence every morning when I come out, and she watches me the way she watched me that first night, with those huge, dark, uncomprehending eyes, like she's asking the question again, the same question, the only question that ever mattered. And every morning I give her the same answer.